Hello, my name is Kayla Staley, and this is my presentation on emotional influence on learning. Just brief overview of what this presentation will hold. First, I'll have my statement on emotions related to learning, my introduction into human learning, a look into how we used to look at learning versus how we should look at it now, negative and positive emotions, the broaden and build theory, and then applying everything that we will discuss into my physical education setting, and then it'll be my works cited. So my statement of impact of emotions on learning is that cognition and emotion are interrelated. And I cannot teach content without also teaching emotion or tending to my students' emotions. I cannot anticipate that I can pour knowledge into a student without also having tending to their emotions. Because our emotions impact our behavior, our thinking, and our reasoning so deeply. If I am angry when I learn something, I might not be more as apt to retain certain knowledge. Very small example, but that is my statement and my belief as far as the impact of emotions in learning. So an introduction to human learning. Humans were not born with as much natural and instinctual knowledge as other animals. However, we do have this capacity to learn even more. And in the Silva and Nobu article, it was interesting to kind of read and become familiar with the idea that animals, while they're born with these instinctual abilities to sense that this is how they're supposed to be, humans, we just simply are not. But our ceiling is so much greater because we can apply different things like reason, but also emotion into our learning. And that because we have the ability to have such a broad range of emotions actually can aid our ability to learn. And this kind of feeds into the same idea that there's this traditional way of thinking about learning, and then there's a new way that we are starting to see and realize is a very functional way for us to view learning. And the traditional view would be, I'm going to pour knowledge into your head, and that's all I need to do. You come to class, I teach you content, you learn that content, transaction over. And how we're really starting to see knowledge now in learning is that emotions are playing this really great role into it. As previously spoken on my statement, I might function differently if I'm in a certain emotion. If I'm in a, maybe we call it positive emotion, which we'll go into more, I'm probably going to receive information differently than if I'm in a quote unquote negative emotion, which is a good segue, leads us into negative and positive emotions. Negative emotions, they really have this ability to narrow our focus. The example that he gave in the video was, if I see a spider, I'm feeling fear, I'm feeling anxiety, and that tiny little spider is the only thing that I can see. It is the only thing that's important in my world right now, no matter how small it is. And it decreases my ability to learn. And in a in an education setting, that could be a student is confused or a student is anxious about having to answer something, and all they can focus on is, I hope they don't call on me. I don't know what I'm doing. Things like that. That takes away from their ability to learn when their sight is narrowed to the anxiety, to the worry, to the negative emotion. It takes away their ability to think freely, to be creative, to critical think. And on the flip side, we have positive emotions. And with positive emotions, it's and a point that I appreciated he made was, it's not just the absence of a negative emotion, but rather a positive. Pretty self-explanatory, but in my mind, there was a distinct difference. Was it's not just the fact that it's not negative, that we need to infuse positive emotions into our learning. And the four main positive emotions that he discussed was curiosity being number one, pride, joy, and excitement. And I think when I'm thinking of a class that I like to be in, I was a curious learner. It was intriguing to me. It was engaging to me. I found some kind of excitement there was typically something that I was having to do. I was having to take pride in it, where it wasn't a passive class. It was usually a little bit more challenging. And so as educators, we need to not only avoid negative emotions in our classroom, but infuse it with positive. And then this kind of leads me into the broaden and build theory, which is the idea that for, again, a long time, people thought that if you do good in school, then you're going to feel positively about yourself. What we found is it's actually the opposite. If I am feeling good, then I will do good. So the way that I feel impacts how I do, not what I did impacted how I felt. And so again, this is just the broaden and build theory, I think, fortifies this idea that if we infuse students with positive emotions, that their ability to see the big picture and to be focused on creative and critical thinking just opens up in comparison to if they have negative emotions when it shrinks down. So then the implications that I see in the physical education setting in regards to these things, I listed the three main negative emotions that I see in, I'm going to say, am constantly battling or trying to overcome or prepare my students for. Frustration, competitiveness, and fear of failure. In physical education, I often think frustration is a huge one. We're learning skills and then applying skills in gameplay. And it can be frustrating if you're not someone whose skills come naturally to, physical skills come naturally to. And you're having to work maybe a little bit harder, maybe your classmates are getting it similar in just like a regular classroom setting where you're comparing yourself to how your peers are doing. And the frustration of not being able to get it, or you get it in the small-sided, but then when we apply to a big game and live play and decision-making is added in, you can see it's that struggle comes back. And so kids can often get frustrated in regards to learning skills, as well as I see frustration in that didn't go the way I wanted. I lost. I didn't want that person on my team. And I call them big emotions. And I think frustration is one of the really big emotions that I see in the classroom that causes very outwardly expressive moments. And so frustration is probably one of the biggest things I see. Competitiveness. I have the kids who are having a hard time transitioning from the mindset of I am a competitive athlete who plays sports competitively outside of school to I'm in a school setting. And that is something, especially with the older kids, the previous PE teacher, to me, it was very, if you're the most athletic kid, you'll dominate PE and it's really, really fun for you. And if you're not a dominant athletic presence, it will not be fun for you. And so those competitive kids don't necessarily love and are having to learn that, okay, this is not my basketball team outside of school. This is school still. And so those feelings of competitiveness, again, maybe I'm feeling competitive, but also, is it about winning, right? Those kind of things. And then fear of failure. I have some kids that they don't want to look silly, or they're afraid that they're going to not measure up to their classmates. And so they just don't participate because it's easier to be like, oh, I wasn't really trying, so that's why I didn't go well. So those are the three main things that I really fight in my classroom that are negative emotions that I think are impacting learning. And my current practices, especially after learning this and trying to figure out how can I infuse positive emotions, and then trying to identify what are ways that I'm currently doing that and how can I do it better. One thing that I do that I've done all year is the game choice. I don't play almost any sport. Let me back up. I teach my 3 through 5 grades through sport units. And we have skill days, we have small-sided games, and then we play usually like a big game or tournament style something. And the games that we play that are small-sided and the big game are never actually the full regular version of whatever sport it is. For instance, if it's soccer, we're never fully playing soccer by all the soccer rules. There's always another goal or another way to be good. And I try to create games or find games that allow them to express their understanding in multiple different ways, for the fact that I want to see that they understand in multiple different ways and provide them the opportunity, but also so that different students who have different skills have the opportunity to excel. And it's not just this team scored 8 points, this team scored 4 points, so this team won. And making it not about winning and losing, but rather personal, small victories throughout it. So by choosing games that have a lack of an emphasis on winning and losing and more of an emphasis on personal achievement. And then the presentation of the game. This is one area that I found that I think I can do a lot better when I was reflecting upon my current practices and how I present the game and what I present as this is what is important to this game. Making an so along with just the natural game flowing with an emphasis on personal achievement, but making it clear, I am looking for you to plant your left foot, swing your right, and then kick with your instep. That would be a success today. And making it very clear, making it small, making it measurable. I think that would help students find success easier and narrow in the focus so that it's like, okay, nothing else matters. If I plant, swing, and kick with my instep today, then I'm succeeding. And I think that would help some of my students who get really, really frustrated with not being able to achieve at the level that their peers are, because now it's becoming, what is Miss Staley wanting? Being more clear and explicit in that. And then something else that I do to help my students overcome some of the negative emotions is we practice. We have a great resource room at my school and staff that teaches the students a lot of emotional intelligence things already. And one of them is breathing techniques to practice when you start to feel those big emotions come on. And so we have started implementing those. We do them at the beginning of every class, and we have a variety of them. And then at random points throughout the class, I'll just stop the game and we'll practice it so that we get good at it. And then I specifically utilize it when I notice some of the kids who struggle with frustration, competitiveness, fear of failure are starting to kind of get amped up a little bit. I'll stop the game. And then it's not about them needing to take a moment to kind of cool down, but rather us as a group, we're just going to do it together. And then my conclusion is that to be an effective physical education teacher, I need to tend to my students' emotions. That was my takeaway from this lesson. And then things that I'd like to further research in the Silva Nobu article. It discussed that the 4 main emotions of learning are surprise, interest, confusion, and awe. And the one that most intrigued me was the idea of confusion. What the article spoke about was that in confusion, we as humans have this natural desire to sort confusing things out. And in particular, like I was saying on confusion, what is the threshold of confusion to defeat or like feeling like I just can't get that for elementary students? And how can I put that and utilize that in physical education? Something I've started is like kind of exploration days where I give them implements and I give them general guidelines that they have to stay within, but then I allow for exploration. And I kind of like the idea of being able to confuse or cause more problem solving. And I think that really intrigued me, and I would want to look more into how I can help my students better learn to be critical thinkers and solve confusing problems. And this is my works cited. And thank you for listening.